et bienvenue au cadre de Fiscalité. Pouvez-vous confirmer votre lettre d'équipe? Est-ce que vous préférez la lecture de règlement en français ou en anglais?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
For this case, you'll have 30 minutes to make your presentation in front of the judges. If your presentation leaves under 18 minutes, you'll receive a 1-point penalty for every 30 seconds. If your presentation leaves under 10 minutes, your team will receive the score of 0 at the general ranking of this case. If after 20 minutes you have not completed the presentation, you will be stopped to move on the period of questions. At the end of the presentation, the judges will have 5 minutes to ask your questions. I remind the jury that it's mandatory to ask a minimum of 1 question during this period. If after 5 minutes you have not finished answering the question, you will be stopped. Throughout the presentation, I will indicate the remaining time using cardboards at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. I will make a countdown using my finger for the last 10 minutes. I remind you that it's prohibited to say the name of your university, and you will receive a penalty. I also remind the public that it's prohibited to use any electronic device during the presentation, and that the public must stay quiet until the end of the period of questions. Before we begin, I'm asking the room to turn off your cell phones and put them on mute so that we don't interrupt the presentation. I will now ask the judges to present themselves, and after you will be free to start your presentation.
François Louis XVI, IG Gestion de patrimoine, directeur régional de Montréal.
Fernand Loisel, directeur régional IG Gestion de patrimoine au bureau de Montréal-Centreville et président de gestion Fernand Loisel Inc.
Martin Dion, directeur régional du bureau de Terrebonne, la Chimay, IG Gestion de patrimoine.
Vanessa Tremblay, directrice en services fiscaux société privée chez PwC.
Woodnegal Delvar, fiscaliste chez Wood du Québec.
So a very famous business professional once said, it's not about how much money you make, but how you can keep it and how many generations you can keep it for. Good afternoon, Madame Dupuis. As you remember, I'm Mary. We met at that wonderful women's conference. And here are my 2 partners, Vincent and Wan Fu, and together we are all in tax consulting because we are all in to save you money. So why are we here today? You told me that you needed some help with your estate planning for your family, and as well as some financial planning. So we have 4 key questions that we're going to go over today. It is how should you go transferring your corporation to your son Justin, how to ensure that there's a fair distribution between your husband and your son, as well as what are some other personal tax matters that require your attention, and then we're going to go also how you should retire and retirement planning. So, we're going to go over your current situation. So you are 50 years old, you have your corporation, Les Assoiffés, and you have an annual dividend of 100K, you wish to retire by 60, you have your son who also works with the company, and your husband who works as a car mechanic. So right now your corporate structure is you own all the shares of Nancy Management Inc., who holds also Les Assoiffés Inc. So now we're going to go over
the estate planning strategy. Thank you, Mary. So the main key issue that you wanted us to focus on today was that your business has been thriving, and now you want to see you're 10 years from retirement. You want to see what can I do to freeze this value and make certain that your very ambitious son Justin can actually take the reins as CEO of that company. how to actually transfer it, this is how we're going to go through step by step. But the first thing that we actually have to verify is whether or not Les Assoiffés is a qualified small business corporation, because that plays a very big role in our analysis going forward. So there's 4 criteria for a qualified small business corporation. The first 2 are usually met. It's Canadian-controlled private corporations, which is fine, and you've held the shares for most of your life, so 24 months is fine. The last 2 are the ones that are an issue, and that's why we need to test that specific portion of it. So based on the corporate structure that we've established, Les Assoiffés Inc. is a qualified small business corporation, so you could sell that, but unfortunately the shares have to be held by a person in order to claim the lifetime capital gain deduction, and right now they're held by Nancy Management, which is a specified investment business. The only asset that Nancy Management has is $3 million worth of investments, and then, therefore those wouldn't be active. So that's why, and that's also subject to a 5% additional tax. So that leaves us with 3 alternatives. What do you do to get rid of that business? First one being extract the assets through a butterfly transaction and open a new corporation and hold them separately. Then sell at fair market value and liquidate the actual business. And finally, keep the investments as keep the investment corporation as it is. Unfortunately, the first one and the third one will not allow you to reach that 90%. And since it's taxed at the 5% penalty rate, it's not efficient for you to keep the money through that corporation. So we decided to sell the investments at fair market value and pay the tax. Unfortunately, I understand that it's going to be a large tax burden when you sell the assets, but it's much better than constantly being taxed a 5% penalty rate on every single investment that you have in that business. So the best alternative is really to sell and incur the capital gains like above. The next strategy, now that we actually have established that Les Assoiffés Inc. is a qualified small business, we're going to see the corporate structure, but right now it's going to be a qualified small business corporation. There's 5 estate planning alternatives that we're going to go through. The first one being a gift, to just basically give it to your son. Unfortunately, ITA 69 would deem that transaction to occur at fair market value, so significant tax liability. Similar to installment sale, but the issue now is the fact that Justin has to obtain $2.5 million in financing, which wouldn't be efficient, which wouldn't be very realistic, even despite his pretty significant salary. So we continued with the reorg. The reorg basically changed all the components of your common shares for the same fair market value in preferred shares. There's actually no immediate tax consequences on the transfer, but once those preferred shares are redeemed, there's going to be a significant deemed dividend under ITA 84.3. So let's move on to rollover into Inter Vivos Trust. This is actually positive, since you were afraid of not being prepared if you die, but unfortunately, not being properly prepared if you were to pass, unfortunately. But we said that under this circumstance, you'd actually still be taxed, because any rollover that occurs to a trust has to be deemed at fair market value, and therefore there's actually a better one, which would be rollover, crystallize your shares through a new corporation that you form. So basically, the first step would be Nancy Management. After you've sold the investments and extracted the value, it will have nothing but the shares of Les Assoiffés Inc. So you will use ITA 87 to amalgamate those corporations into NewCo. Then you will roll over those common shares that you own of that NewCo into a new NewCo that Justin has created, and he has subscribed to common shares at a nominal rate there. And as long as you take back preferred shares of $2.5 million, you will be fine, have no immediate tax consequences, except for the $433 elected transfer price that you're going to do and claim your lifetime capital gain deduction on that $433. So there's going to be no immediate tax consequences, and the excess you will claim as preferred shares as fair market value. And as long as you don't take cash out of that transaction, you will officially transfer it to Justin without having him to have a lot of cash in order to pay for those shares at the fair market value of 2.5 in 10 years. So now I'll pass it on to my colleague Guangfu to go over wills and trusts.
Thank you, Vince. So now that we have addressed the issue of estate freezing and utilize your lifetime capital gain deduction, let's move forward to the next one of your biggest concern is that you're afraid that after your departure, your family members will not get the same fair attribution of income. So what's the current situation here? The key factor is that Justin has been working for the firm. He has a finance degree, and also he wants to take over the business. As your husband, Robert, he has a lower annual salary income of $45,000 per year. The key consideration that we want to take here is that we want to ensure that Robert and Justin can be properly taken care of and live a comfortable life moving forward. So we have two recommendations here. One is to have a notarized will, and also we propose a spousal trust. Let's take a closer look. The first layer we want to do is the notarized will. So what this does is it will specify which part of your asset goes to who, and will provide a certain protection of your assets. However, this will also avoid potential probates. However, that being said, sometimes will can be disputed. So what we plan to do here for the second layer is to set up a second trust, a trust on the spousal trust. So this will allow you, Nancy, to roll over the previous investments that you have disposed to this spousal trust at tax cost. So this will provide the tax consequences without triggering very significant tax liabilities, because everything will be transferred at tax cost. And this will be a simple structure of your trust. Essentially, what happens is that the trust will hold RSP, your preferred shares of Les Assois, and your house. The setter will be you. The trustee will be your husband, and the trustee will be the independent consultant and accountant, and the beneficiary will be Robert. And here are some risk and mitigations here. The first risk we want to address here is that just in case, again, to come back to the issue that you're afraid that income will not be distributed fairly. So what we'll have is to set up a spousal trust for that. The contingency here is that you may also be concerned that your son Justin may not get enough money. So what you can do is to set up another trust for Justin. That being said, anything that goes over to the regular trust will be deemed to be disposed at fair market value. So you would have to incur an immediate tax consequence when the assets are rolled over to the regular trust. Another thing is we talked about freezing your estate using IPA Section 85. One risk could be here is that CRA may deem that the rollover is not at fair market value. So the mitigation we have here is to have professional valuations done beforehand, before the rollover, and the contingency will also include a purchase price adjustment just in case that CRA deemed the money to be unfair. So there will be no significant tax consequences. And now we'll move on to personal tax matters.
Alright, so we're going to talk about personal tax matters because personal tax matters. Okay, so you told us that you get a dividend income right now. So it's good to have dividend income, but there are some things that you do not benefit from having dividend income. It's not considered earned income, which means that you cannot make any contributions to your RSPs. And at a high salary like that, you should be taking advantage of it. So another good thing of having a salary is that it's deductible to the corporation, so you'll have less tax payable in the end. It counts as, like I said, earned income for RSP purposes, and there's withholdings also. So for dividends, no deduction to the corporation, but you're eligible for the DTC, and it does not count as earned income. So we're looking here at a quantitative analysis. We did the best option for you is actually a mix of both salary and dividends. So your corporation right now doesn't have enough to take out $100K as salary. Well, we still want to have a mix of both, so we would have never suggested to do a $100K salary. But we took a $65K. We also took your spousal RSP. So what's good is that currently your husband he's in a lower marginal tax bracket, so he doesn't really need to use it, so you can use it. And what this is it's a tax deferral and also a tax reduction. So basically, you're reducing your tax payable right now, and also when you withdraw from it, it's going to go back to him and his marginal tax rate. So it's basically a double win. So we also decided that you still need the RSPs take about $20K. So we decided to add that as a dividend income. So we said about $55,000 gives you an after-tax retention of $94,000. And then, like I said, your RSP deferred income is almost $20,000. So it's very beneficial for you to take both a mix of salary and dividends. And it can always be adjusted as the years go on and how your company is doing too. So you said you have 5 very key employees, and because of them, you wouldn't be where you are today. So we decided to let you know some benefits you can also give them. So some of these are taxable, some of them are not. You could do an RRP, so it's not taxable to the employee, but when they do withdraw, they will be taxed at their marginal tax rate. And it's deductible to you as the employer. There's dental and health insurance, both deductible to both you and the non-taxable to the employee. We have any merchandise, if it's at cost, you can give it to them. It's not taxable. And then another thing is a vehicle allowance. So it is taxable to the. Sorry, it's not taxable to the employee as long as it goes by the CRA standards. So that's the 58 cents for the first 5,000 kilometers, and then 52 cents for the excess for deduction. So as long as you stay in that, then the allowance is not taxable to your employee. So you also said you have a life insurance policy right now with the bank. Because it's with the corporation, you can deduct it, it's fine, but the premiums are only deductible if it's a reasonable business expense it's being used for and it's required by the bank, which it is. And then the proceeds, if applicable, are it's added to your CDA account. And then we have also the transfer of the cottage. So you gave us 3 options that you heard about. I'm going to go over why they're good and why they might not be so good for you. So the living donation, which is gifting, what happens is there's immediate tax consequences for this. So they're transferred at fair market. The CRA deems them at fair market value. Then the preferred pricing, which is less than fair market value, is also double taxation. It's actually the worst option for you. We would not recommend it at all. What happens is you have a higher proceeds of disposition. Your son has a lower adjusted cost base, and what this causes is double taxation. So don't do it. And then bequest through a will. So a will is good, but it's not the strongest legal form to use. It can be contested. So like we suggested before, a trust is actually stronger. And then there would be tax consequences once the death happens. So we're actually going to recommend something very different. And that's because after looking at the capital gain per year, we realized that you're better off actually claiming your cottage as a principal residence. So you can maximize your capital gain deduction that way. And in order to do this, you should change your mailing address, maybe your driver's license address as well, and make that as your principal residence until you sell to your son. So and now we're going to go over retirement planning. I'm going to pass it to my partner, Juan.
So let's talk about retirement planning. The first thing is the timeline. So where are we here now? Right now it's 2020. You said you want to retire at age, well, in 10 years later at the age of 60. And we also did an average life expectancy around 90 years old for both you and your husband. So the key factors here is that currently your household income combined for both you and your husband after net of tax is approximately $93,000 on a yearly basis. What we want to do is that we want to make sure to maintain at least 90% of your current income level after retirement so you can live comfortably. So we did a calculation. Essentially, you need around $84,000 per year per household after retirement, and with the assumption of a tax rate, you need $140,000 pre-tax. So with that said, we also took a calculation on how much money you need based on that cash inflow. So here are based on those cash outflows. So here are a few assumptions that we've made. The first thing is the expected return. We assume that 5.5% return. We'll go over the portfolio of that a bit later. We also assumed the IER of 1.5%, and we took into consideration of the inflation rate as well. So basically, with the annual cash flow of the next 30 years, we did the present value of all those cash outflow in the future for your retirement is $3.6 million. So essentially, you need to have the present value of $3.6 million to retire comfortably. With that said, let's take a look at how much money you have. So right now, other than your regular salary and dividend you're taking out from the firm, essentially the cash flow required that you have is the first thing is the worth of your business. So basically, what we're doing right now is you have freezed the value of your share in preferred shares. That's with a present value in 2030 of $2.5 million. Another thing is that you will have the investment that you have previously disposed. So basically, with that, everything adds together minus the cash required, you still have actually quite a bit of leftover of like $2.3 million. So essentially, the key takeaway here is that you do have enough income from your current assets to retire comfortably moving forward. And we've been, so we have essentially used a 5.5% annual rate of return moving forward, and this is a sample component of our portfolio makeup. So basically, it's a pretty balanced portfolio composing around 50% of fixed income and 50% of equity. In terms of equity, we want it to be a bit more defensive because considering your risk-bearing ability and also this money is for retirement purpose, we want to make sure that in terms of the equity part, we are allocating a bit more towards the defensive sectors such as utility, healthcare. Another thing we want to mention here is the sustainable energy. We think that it's really important to invest in corporations that are ethical and have a sustainable practice because in the long run, usually the companies like this will bear a lower risk, and therefore increase the profitability of the firm. And the tax implications on this essentially is that 50% of the capital gain will be taxable in the future when you withdraw, and you will, because the portfolio will be mostly made up of the eligible dividend, that will be, you also have the DTC credit moving forward. And here are a few of the investment vehicles that you can have with that portfolio. So as my colleague mentioned, Mary mentioned before, spousal RSP, and RSP is really good. So what we did is that we try to maximize both we try to increase your earned income, so you have the RSP contribution room, and we did the spousal RSP. The TFSA as well, so as cumulative to 2019, the total TFSA limit is 69,000. So if you haven't maximized that, we recommend you to maximize that. Any income generated from that TFSA account will be tax-free. Real estate investment, that's another big one we want to talk about, particularly in terms of tax treatment. The thing about real estate investment is that basically most of the expenses will be tax deductible in terms of the mortgage, the utilities, admin expenses, and property tax. So in the long run, it also provides a pretty stable investment and a pretty stable cash inflow. So that will be also really good in terms of both tax treatment and also in terms of the financial yield. And the other portfolios that if you have moving forward. And now I'll move it down to my Mary.
All right, so why are we here today? We were here to provide you financial planning and how to basically retire happily, right? So how do you go about transferring the corporation to Justin? He said you should amalgamate and then pass it over to Justin. Then how to ensure the fair distribution? We said the best thing is the trust. It's the safest and most secure way. And then what about the other tax matters? So we had like the fringe benefits, we had the cottage, and then also how can you retire comfortably at 60? Well, one went over a very detailed presentation, but we hope that we were here today to really give you the advice you were looking for, and we are opening up the floor to questions. Thank you.
Consider the asset from the insurance that they already have when you calculate the amount for the retirement.
Yes, we did. So essentially, what we calculated is after calculating the total cash that's going to be needed, we considered the total source of income that's going to be available at retirement. The first major one will be the company that Nancy currently holds, and the second one will be all the assets Nancy holds at the moment. And we actually future valued it with a similar interest rate and yield return to see how much money that will be worth.
If Nancy would suffer a critical illness or disability tomorrow or next month, so what would be the game plan?
Well, the main reason, just to make certain, it's before we would be able to establish the will or the trust, like before our strategy?
It's right now, like it's today.
Right now, the possibility is as long as you're common law and or married to your spouse, it automatically rolls over. You can roll over your assets to your spouse without any tax consequences. That being said, if both of them have any problem, like it could be an issue if you have not had that, if you're not married, but if you are married or common law, there's a tax-free rollover to your spouse on death.
what is the reason why you amalgate Les Assoiffés and Nancy Management Inc. before to roll over the share to Justin?
I'm sorry?
What is the reason why you amalgate like Nancy Management Inc., Les Assoiffés Inc. before to roll over the share to Justin?
This is mainly because we wanted to make certain that it was perfectly owned only by yourself, so that you can actually provide your elected transfer price a little bit higher than the actual tax cost to manufacture a little bit of a tax liability, which would be eliminated by your lifetime capital gain deduction. And that's why we wanted to be directly held by you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And who's going to have the control of Les Assoiffés V2 after the rollover?
That's a very good question. So essentially, after the rollover, the company, the day-to-day operation will be going to Justin. He will be subscribing to the common shares. However, we'll make sure that the preferred share is locked in value. So essentially, what this achieves is that of the day-to-day operation, Justin will be able to will be responsible for that. However, this will also provide a pretty stable cash inflow for the husband moving forwards for estate planning purposes.
I guess I can go. I see that you suggest a trust in the section of will and trust. Do you think it could be a great idea to have the trust hold the common share, and if yes, why?
That's actually good. It could be a possibility because you could split the income, split the capital gain amongst many family members. But under this scenario, we thought that with the people involved, we thought that that was the best strategy going forward. But yes, you could split it, but because of the tax rate and other issues with the trusts, we decided against it.
So you suggest to have a trust a part of the corporate structure?
Correct.
Perfect.
Super. Thank you.